The Secrets of Technology is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Technology, where we discuss the technology news that's important to you from a uniquely Catholic point of view. And joining me today on the panel are Pat Scott. Hey, Pat.
Greetings.
And Father Andrew Kinstetter. Hey, Father Andrew.
Hello there.
Before we get to today's topic, I want to tell everyone about another show on the StarQuest Network they're sure to enjoy called The Secrets of Sacred Art, which it's been such a great show, and it's a video show, so you can listen to the audio, but you'll get even more if you watch the show on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/StarQuestMedia. They've been doing 2 episodes recently on the Book of Kells, and it's been really fantastic. So you should definitely check that out. And if you just want to listen to the audio, you can find that wherever fine podcasts are found, or at sqpn.com/art. So, but on this episode of Secrets of Tech, we're going to be talking about picking up the subject of photos. Photos is one of the most fundamental things we all use our smartphones for. In fact, the idea that we call them smartphones is kind of funny because they're really just smart cameras with phone functionality and other things in them. I mean, the number one reason people, I've heard, one of the most important reasons people upgrade their phones is to get better cameras. They can put it that way. So back in March of earlier this year, 2024, we discussed in episode 247 basics of photo management on our various operating systems. Now we want to take about the next step in a little bit more advanced photo management, and we want to talk about organizing your photos and tagging them, and then maybe a little bit about getting the photos out of our devices and into the real world. So we can get into that. So just, full disclosure right now, most of my experiences in the Apple ecosystem, as listeners probably know, but I do use Google Photos and Amazon Photos quite a bit. Even Google Photos a little more than Amazon Photo as a backup, but also because Google Photos does things that Apple Photos does not. So I just want to throw that out there. Father Andrew, I guess you're probably mostly Apple.
Yes, I have used a little bit of Amazon Photos as a backup in the past, but also, mine is still working, so I assume it's still a thing, but if you use Amazon Photos as a backup, I have an Echo Show that will, so actually that plays into what we're going to talk about. It plays my favorites that I've backed up to Amazon Photos on my Echo Show as sort of a screensaver, and I really like that. But then it interferes with, it shows a bunch of ads too, which I have to constantly clean out, so.
Yeah, and Amazon's helpful opportunities to get you to buy things from them.
Right. I feel like I go through and I turn everything off, and then like the next time I look at it, it's like there's 6 more that are new and turned on, and it's like, oh.
Would you like to see the news from? I get news headlines from Atlanta. Why? I don't know, but
are you on a VPN?
Yeah. Well, it kind of shows that maybe Amazon doesn't know everything, and it makes me feel better.
But ultimately, Apple Photos is what I use for everyday management and stuff for photos.
Okay. How about you, Pat? Where do your photos mainly live?
Yeah, they live on my iPhone and copies of them on a Mac. I use a PC most of the time, so one of the problems with Apple Photos is it's kind of inconsistent in being able to keep up with them on a Windows PC. It's better than it was 2 years ago, but at any rate. And then I have a copy in Google Photos that periodically I'll go over and play, make sure that things are still going there, because I have it turned on to say everything I take on the iPhone gets copied over to Google Photos. And that has helped one other family member immensely when something went wrong with her Apple Photos and she lost a whole bunch. So, yeah. And then, as I say, trying to work on Windows is interesting.
Yeah.
Is there a built-in photo app in Windows?
Oh, and it's a very good one. It's much better than it was like on Windows 7. It's a good Photos app. It does editing, cropping, lightening, darkening, special. vintage, types of things. And you can do slideshows and that type of thing. It organized them by date, just like the Apple Photos does.
Okay.
But you do have some other ways of looking and searching for them.
So for this episode, I want to mostly focus on Apple Photos and Google Photos, mainly because those are what's on most people's phones. That's where they'll start their journey with this. They'll have them on their phones. So, but of course, you could do almost everything we're going to talk about on your computer, with the Windows, Mac, Linux. But I want to kind of talk about it phone first, or be phone centric here. And in order to talk about that, we should probably discuss what's new in Apple Photos, because iOS 18 is out and Apple Photos has changed in iOS. Have either of you had a chance to look at the new Apple Photos there? And what do you think, Father?
Yes, because I like to play with the beta, so I've been dealing with it since the summer. And I have to admit, it took some getting used to. It was a drastic enough change in the user interface for me that I think there are a lot of things that I like. I like that it immediately shows you your library. So like, at least like, I don't know, the top 3/4 of the screen is your library, and then you scroll down to get your albums and all that stuff. And I do really appreciate that. But it played around with the albums, and I wasn't entirely too thrilled with that initially. And I had to sort of work through it and figure out how. Thankfully, a lot of it's customizable, and you can reorder things. And so I had to reorder things because I like. And we'll get into this. Like I used to create albums for everything. Like when my years in seminary, I've got St. John Vianney year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, and I used to be very, very consistent about making albums. And I have since fallen away from that in the last decade. So for me, what's important is when I have a picture that I like, I hit that favorite button. And so that's my most crucial album. And then I've got a couple others that I have, certain art pieces or art that I've had made or Star Wars photos or whatever that are unique enough that I've been able to customize those and put those right up front. Which I do appreciate that. The one thing that really threw me for a loop though was, and I don't know how many people use it, but one of my main go-tos when I'm trying to find a photo that I didn't put in an album, because I haven't done that in the last decade, was I remember where I took the photo. So I like to go to the map and then use the map and zoom in on the location, and the photos in that area, I can click on that and then I can find the photo. And they hid the map album all the way in the utilities, in like the back end of the utilities. And it used to be for me kind of front and center. And I don't know, maybe I haven't played with it enough if I can move it, but can I move it now? Maybe with the original beta over the summer, it was thrown there. And then, okay, I'll have to go back, because I like that one front and center too, because then I can also oh yeah, let me show you that picture from Rome that I took when I went there. And I love the map ability, but originally it was kind of thrown in the back. So, okay, I'll have to go back and pull it forward.
So a couple of things I want to mention is that my understanding is, like, I didn't get on the early betas. My understanding is that photos changed a lot during the betas. It was much more radically different, and then they kind of backed it off over time. I think because it was too much for some people, or just wasn't working. It was
a real drastic change. I think originally, like the library was only like maybe 50% of the screen, and I mean, like, so they've made it. Yeah, they've eased up some of the drastic changes.
I know I had a hard time when I first got into it trying to find my albums. I just thought, where's my albums? I couldn't find them. And then finally I realized I could collapse some things up above and I could find my albums then. But it was very awkward. And when I was in a hurry and I just upgraded my phone, I just was a little bit upset.
So one of the things that I love to do is I love to find things by year and month and date. Like, so, that vacation was in August of 2022. Where did, I want to find those photos. And so I depend on that a lot. And like, where do I find year, month, day?
I lost that too. I couldn't figure it out for a while. And then I found it.
Right. So the way you find it is you're on the main screen of Apple Photos. You scroll down a little bit. You make the grid at the top full screen.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to do it now. There you go. And then it appears at the bottom, year, month, all, that sort of thing. So I'm like, oh, okay. See, now that it's there, now it's intuitive, but it wasn't intuitive.
Right.
Well, that means it wasn't intuitive. It means that you learned it.
Exactly. Now, on the map thing, Father, and this is one of the new things is in iOS 18 is collections. So if you look under your grid of photos, you have recent days, which I really like. People. Nice thing with people is you can do groups of people. So, for example, you could, at first it was just, people like individuals. Like I have groups for my kids, tags, my kids, faces tagged. But I have one that's tagged with my mom and my dad. So all the pictures of my mom and dad together. So, by the way, today is the anniversary of my dad's death 2 years ago. So, say if you can say a prayer for him, please. And all, I appreciate it. But I like having this little pinned collection there. It's of people there, and then underneath it is actually called pinned collections. And if you hit them, there's a modify link there, and you can move things around. You could show which pinned collections are up front. And so I have as my top 3 favorites, recently saved, map. So you can get map visible right up front there.
I just found that out as you're walking through it, and I added it. And for me, I actually, if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you can customize and reorder even the major sections. Yes. I put the pinned collections right at the very top. So it's even above the people and because some of those, like, I don't know. To be honest, I don't do much with memories or the featured photos stuff. But there's some of those albums that I do want to get to right away. Or for me, often it's even, I like the recently viewed is a handy one, because if you're like showed that picture to somebody and be like, in the few days, oh, I just looked at that photo and I want to pull it up again, you can go to your recently viewed. Right. And I like the recently saved too, because sometimes if I'm downloading a picture from the internet, it might have a date from 2010, and then it doesn't show up in my library, or it shows up in 2010 in my library, but I need it right away. And the recently saved, it'll be right up front. So I do like that. So
another thing to keep in mind is everything scrolls left and right as well. So if you go down to media types and utilities, those scroll if you tap and scroll. And the media types is interesting because you have videos, selfies, slow-mo, cinematic. But you keep going, you'll get things like spatial. Like if you've taken spatial videos that are good for the Vision Pro, I look at 2 of them for some reason. Animated, raw. I have a lot of raw photos in there because I had a Micro Four Thirds camera that I used a lot. But then if you go into utilities, I forget where this was. Yeah, under utilities, you have things like hidden and recently deleted, duplicates. I have receipts. So photos that it thinks are pictures of receipts. Not all of them are, actually, which is kind of funny. Some of it's like the kids' homework.
Well, you received it.
Yeah, that's apparently, or the old-fashioned meaning of receipt, which means recipe, or handwriting. So pictures.
I like the handwriting one. Yeah.
QR codes. How often I take pictures of QR codes because of something I want to go back and reference. They're all right there. So, although my recently saved says 20,000.
Oh, mine's 7,000, so I'm a little bit more discreet.
I don't know if that's not the entire library either. My wife is a prolific photo taker. So
I like the illustrations one too, because I am constantly downloading digital art, that whether it's Star Wars or whatever. And I've got, what's it say? I've got 3,600 photos in the illustrations one.
I have 1,200, and I've got a lot of kids' drawings.
Yep. No, also, that's better than it was over the summer. Yeah.
Pictures of art from museums, picture of my brother-in-law's art, which is nice. Pat's son is a very good artist. So I love that the whole point is to help you surface your content. Like, instead of having this vast bucket, when that's what we have, is so many of us have tens of thousands. Okay, I'm looking right now. I have 68,000 photos in my photo library. That's just a crazy number. I remember when I was a kid, when we had actual physical photos and photo albums, or in my house was usually in big bins in the attic, just loose photos. But it was maybe hundreds or thousands. I can't imagine what 68,000 photos would look like. We wouldn't take that many because we take photos of.
Oh, they were expensive.
Right. Yeah.
We take a dozen photos of random products in the supermarket we're thinking of buying. It's like, hey, Melanie, should I pick this up today? That sort of thing. And I forget to delete it. But it's still 68,000 photos. So they're giving us ways to organize it. And so that's really good. One of the things that we can do in the collections is you could tag things like by people's faces. So it recognizes faces, and it does a pretty decent job of from childhood to adult or to grown children. So it gets my kids to pretty young ages, although when they're in the 1s and 2s, it gets them confused a lot. But it will do pets now, which is interesting. So you can have it tag photos of your pets. Unfortunately, too many people treat their pets like they're like substitutes for children, but that's a whole nother discussion for another day. But that's pretty cool. So so the groups of people and the pets, those are pretty good. And see what anything else. There's a recovered album in the utilities that finds images that are on your device but were not previously visible due to database corruption and a locked album. That's how Apple puts it. So when you upgrade, go take a look in there. You might find something that you thought you'd lost. That might be. In fact, I haven't looked in that one myself under utilities. I
didn't see it under utilities.
Yeah, there isn't one there. So if you have it there, that means it's found some. Let's put it that way.
Okay, so I'm
go look for it. Yeah. So that's the new iOS 18 photos. It's not like that on the Mac. The Mac still looks pretty much the same, which I thought was interesting. They really didn't change that at all. So what was I going to say? Jimmy Aiken was just calling me in the middle of the show. I have my
do not disturb.
I have my phone set to do not disturb, except for
Jimmy,
my wife, and Jimmy.
Yeah.
So
I'll say hi to him tomorrow for you. I'm going to San Diego.
That's right. I'm jealous. So because Jimmy and I have never been in the same room together, but that's a whole nother digression. So as I was saying, we need to talk about the different ways of organizing. And Father, you talked about putting stuff in albums, and I was the same way. Early on in my digital photo days, I was very much about albums, and I had a hierarchy of albums and, subfolders and, all that stuff. I've still got one like a wedding photo for our wedding photos. I have a folder called events by year and month. And so I have like year by year folders, and then organized by month. This was before Apple was doing this in photo. So now that's not necessary because Apple organizes them by month and year. And I think I left off in 2015. How do you organize your photos, or do you bother? What do you do now? Father, you kind of started talking about albums.
Yeah. So my method of madness is really, my favorites album is everything. So, if I snapshot the thing at the grocery store that I'm looking at, or I download the random screenshot from off the internet that I thought was cool looking, those all just go into the library and they fill up the vast thousands of things. But I always make sure that if there was like, oh yeah, we took the group photo at the sports bar last night and I really like that photo, I'll just hit the favorite button. So every photo that sort of ranks in my important level versus just the vast majority gets that favorite button, even if it's a art commission that I had done, or a selfie that I thought was good looking, or family photos, pictures of vacation, whatever. Especially when it comes to when you have like 5 photos of the same two people, and the best one always gets the favorite, and then the rest just kind of get thrown into the rest. So I use albums for a few specific things, like some of the art that I've collected, but really It's the favorites album and the map album, and then occasionally I'll do the sort by year, but that's just going back through the library. So those are kind of my main organization. And I know I don't know. I feel like I probably lost a few photos in the vast last decade, but for the most part, this covers my needs for what I'm doing.
Okay. How about you, Pat? How do you organize your photos?
Like I've got one for family artwork, one for Tim and one for your kids, the artwork that they do. And I've got a section called Faith where I've got any religious pictures that I see that I've taken copies of and downloaded, I put in there. And I've got big events like a big wedding or something that we've gone to, or there's a section for Boston trips, but I have not gotten, I used to be more specific about, this was this year and this was this trip, and I don't do that anymore. It's more, and I need to use favorites more. I don't use it very much. And, so when I go look at my favorites, it's usually old favorites, not because they're wonderful, but because I haven't done any.
Sure.
So I'm in the tricky situation where I've got a family shared album, and I've got my kids putting stuff in there now. And so, like I said, Melanie likes to take lots of pictures of plants and flowers, and there'll be, like I look at right now, there's like 6 pictures of goldenrod she took the other day. I don't know why, but she just wanted to. She likes taking pictures of flowers. Or the kids. I have so many selfies of my kids, especially my oldest. She loves to do.
You can make a movie out of them later.
I know. Actually, I love seeing them. I use them as screensavers on my phone. Actually,
yeah.
I'm grateful to have them to see my beautiful kids. But as far as other organization, I do have a favorites folder that I've put things in, but I've often used that as temporary, where I put things in there
to show people.
And yeah, or sometimes when my blog was still active, if I went on a trip and I wanted to collect photos to use in my blog post or to post to Facebook, I'd save them in photos. And then when I was done with them, I'd unfavorite them and move them back. Although with the Apple TV, it can use that favorites album to do the screensaver there. So I may go back to use that more of a permanent album. But to be honest, one of the things I do in both Google Photos and Apple Photos is I just use the smart search. And iOS 18 now, they've added more smarts, but Google is head and shoulders better than Apple at the searching for stuff using plain language. For example, today I knew I'd taken some photos of dramatic skies, like clouds and the sunset and whatever, and I was looking for a particular one, and Apple, even the new photos, couldn't find it. Dramatic sky. What? I don't know what dramatic means. The whatever. So I went to Google Photos and put in dramatic sky, and boom, all of these dramatic sky photos from my album popped up, and I could narrow it down. I want landscapes. I want ones that have sunsets, and it wasn't perfect, but it was giving me what I needed enough to find what I wanted, and that's one of the things that's really great about Google Photos. It's really great at surfacing stuff. And frankly, I have a Google account, so it doesn't cost me anything beyond having the Google account for $2 a month. I think it is. I think I paid because I got the Google account because I wanted the increased storage from my Gmail account. And I get the Google Photos account with it. And there's no extra work in having all your photos in Google Photos. And I've recommended in the past that it's a great place to back up your photos, but it's also a great way to find photos and keep it organized there. So that I highly recommend using both and using Google Photos as a way to search until Apple Photos search gets better. They've promised the new AI stuff that's coming in future versions of the operating system will make it better. We'll see. Right now, Google Photos does it better. So
Google searching has always been great. So you could figure the photos would be, yeah.
Yep. Doesn't Google Photos do? I had a few that I remember uploading to Google Photos, and it almost like there's a magic button that it'll like make. I remember a picture that I took from Guatemala, and it sort of turned it into this really cool, like it looked like a professional art piece. Yes. And it was really my photo. It wasn't.
Yeah.
Those were cool. On Apple,
Prettify it.
Yeah.
Well, in fact, Google Photos will often take the initiative and take a photo and make it the pop out. So like the subject is in colored, everything else is black and white. Or this one, we've enhanced the colors in the sunset.
And they tell you what they've done.
Yeah. I have a bunch where it's made panoramas because I've taken wide angle or
Stitched them
several
together.
shots and stitched them together, that sort of thing. Although I get some funny panoramas in there where it has my son looks like a giant on the horizon. Like I don't know what, something went wrong at Google that day.
I know.
But
I've seen it stitch together some things automatically that I didn't realize that I had enough pictures side by side to do, and that was really cool. It did it for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like some of the extras that they do in there for you. They just sort of, and that's one of the things that both do is they like Apple's big thing is gathering photos together in the memories or I think the memories collections, and I love those. I mean, this is as a family thing, that's a perfect way to put it. Puts it to music. I think they do it a little better than Google in that part. But the other things that Google does is really great. That thing you mentioned about how it will occasionally take a photo. Like you can do it manually, enhance a photo, but sometimes it will just take one of your photos and say, "Hey, I enhanced this for you. What do you think?" And I'm like, "Sure, I like it.
Yeah,
let's keep that." Now, one of the things that comes up, and I don't know if this is much of a big deal as it used to be, is captions. Well, I first want to start with tagging and identifying people. Do you bother? Let me put it this way: it will automatically tag people when you're first setting up your system. It'll want you to put names to faces, and then it will start to do it automatically after a while. But it always will give you more over time. Do you guys do much of that beyond, say, the immediate family, siblings or kids or whatever?
No, I used to, when it first kind of came out, I thought it was really cool and I kind of went crazy with it. But then I never really went back to it and used it. So I still tend to search for photos, not by faces or not by people, but by like that group photo we took in 2022. And I remember, where, and that's how I go down the road. I don't use the tagging or identifying people.
Okay.
I do sometimes when I have waiting in the doctor's office and I've got a long wait, I'll sit there and let me see how many other photos of Melanie I've got that I hadn't gotten in that initial collection or that type of thing. I really like the new thing where you can say two people, a group, because that always used to bug me. I want the pictures of Melanie and Teresa together, and this gives me that where I couldn't do that before. So I really like that.
Okay.
Go ahead. I was going to say captions a different thing. Yeah. Yeah.
Captions versus labels versus photo names. There's a big thing. So you could put a caption on a photo, which is usually a description of what's going on in the photo. There are labels, which is kind of like tags. They're almost like categorization. And then there's photo names, when you download a
file
photo,
name,
it's like, the file name, img1077-heek or heef or whatever. Do you care much about doing any of those things? Do you use any of those methods to organize?
I have a lot of clients that are into photography as a hobby, not as a professional thing. And the fact is that, when we were younger and we had photo boxes where you could write on the back of the photo, that was very helpful for future generations. And so what they're looking at is, if I'm gone, nobody's going to know that this is Aunt Mary or Cousin Lucy because she's gone now. So I have a bunch of clients that are taking some photo classes from another client. And basically she uses an app because she uses an Apple phone. But there's an app called Snapseed, and there's a whole bunch of others that you can actually put text at the bottom, very small, very, in a contrasting font or whatever. So it's right on the photo itself.
Okay, not metadata.
Right.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times when you export out, you lose all those captions and labels. And unless they're on the photo itself. So, yes, I had several people that said they had all of their stuff categorized beautifully, and then they changed machines and had to go to a different format, and all of a sudden those that were all stripped away, and they don't have them anymore. So but the putting it just in a single line at the bottom of the photo may answer some of that for some people. File names, if I want to rename a photo so I can find it later, I'll still keep the IMG, whatever it is, at the end, but put the descriptor up in the front so that I've got some way of knowing which things were taken at the same time. Or I might have the IMG and then space birthday 2024 or whatever. But that way I don't lose when was this really taken, or what series were these grouped together, whose camera it was, etc. So I kind of use a little bit of that, but mostly it's when I think about what happens if somebody wants to see these later, then I'll go back and I'll put that little caption at the bottom.
Okay. Father, do you do much of that?
Maybe it's because I'm a millennial and I sort of just think I'm going to remember things forever. No, I don't. The only times that I do are when I create a photo book or like a Shutterfly booklet from the vacation. And then I'll go in and add a caption or, identify who it was because it was a special event or something. But in general, digitally, I don't.
You don't bother. Yeah.
I don't bother with any of that. I think it would take up too much of my time, and then I don't think I would find the time worth it for me.
Yeah. Well, I don't do a lot of it myself, but as I say, people that I do know that are really into photography, that's important to them. So I want to mention
especially
it,
if you're trying to kind of create a digital legacy and hand it off to someone, your grandson or granddaughter, those captions could be, especially with, old photos that they have not a clue who they are. That makes perfect sense for that sort of thing.
I think I'm guessing I'm in the middle of the generation where I've done some of that, but it's kind of fallen. But it's overwhelming. Like I said, 68,000 photos is so many. There's in Apple Photos on the Mac. There is under the Windows. There's a window called Keyword Manager, and you can set up keywords or tags. And label your photos with these keywords. And I have dozens of them. Most of them, I look at them like, oh, these are for very old photos. Like I started doing this years ago when I had a few thousand photos. Now it just seems so overwhelming. But I also understand the point that your friend was making, Pat, which is who's going to know what any of this is in 40 years,
10 years even.
Yeah, even 10 years. So that is much on my mind, actually. These days is a photo album or a family photo library of 68,000, 70,000. By the time I'm gone, maybe it'll be 100,000 photos. Does any of it matter? Is it going to be worth digging through? I want my kids to be able to take this legacy of the best stuff and take it with them.
And maybe you have to say, I'm not going to do all of them. I'm just going to go through and say, maybe get representative sample and label those.
That's what the favorites album is for.
Exactly.
Well, and maybe that's what you do is when you get your favorites album, then you may want to come up with a permanent way of giving it something that can be passed on.
And let's talk about that because that's my next topic, which is printing books and printing photos. Now, back in the day, book printing was built into these apps and the Apple Photos. They did it, and we used to use it when I worked for the Archdiocese of Boston. We used to make my colleague George Martel would make. He was a photographer. Make commemorative books that Cardinal Sean would give to people after events and that sort of thing. To commemorate it. Cool. And these were beautiful books with. This so well printed. Like I just love the quality, and you can still get that using third parties. And a lot of these were the companies that Apple was using in the first place. So there's a couple different ones. Mixbook.com, Canva does it, which is you'd be surprised, but Canva.
It acts like a design program, but there's a whole section for printing books.
Yeah. And then the one I think which Apple actually used was it's at photobooks.pro. I think that's actually if you look at it, those look exactly like the books that Apple used to make. So I think they're the company that Apple used. And they have software that interfaces with the Apple Photos app. Now there are other companies. There's Shutterfly that you could use with Windows and Google stuff. And this is a bunch of different companies. Shutterfly may be the most well known. But what I started doing was doing yearbooks where I would go through the photos from that year and pick out the best and assemble them into a book and get the book printed. And I have it on the shelf, just like a photo album. I have exactly one of those.
That's a fantastic idea, though. I mean, just like in high school where you had a yearbook, or college you had a yearbook.
I have several clients who do that every year. They print off a photo book so that their family will have it.
Yes. I was considering. Oh, I've not really been seriously thinking about it, but I kept thinking, like, if the only times that I do a photo book is like if it was a vacation, but that's such a specific and small time frame that it was like, I don't want to do that for, the what happened in August and September was nothing, but I need to have a book to commemorate those 2 months. Right. I like the idea of a yearbook where it's kind of just the entire year, and then it's less overwhelming. You just do one per year.
Yes. I really want to get back into it, and for me it's just a discipline issue. It's not that hard to do. It's just a matter of sitting down and taking some time to do it, and because it is wonderful to especially to get to pull it off the shelf and look through it. And Pat, one of the things that inspires me is that you have lots of the old style family photo albums with actual photos.
And we haven't kept up with it now, but it's that idea.
Going to visit at your house. And the kids looking through the books when they were younger. And I remember doing that as a kid with my family. And I think it's a great thing to have because it's that connection from the generations and it's preserved. And these books are like, especially the Apple photo book one, the photobooks.pro, they're museum quality paper. These are going to last. They're not going to fade in a couple of years. You pay a little bit more for it, but these are generational heirlooms, and I love that idea. And it makes all these tens of thousands of photos, it boils them down to something that we can hand on. Yeah, so I think there's a value in that for the generations, and I think everyone should consider something along those lines because we want to hand something on. So
this is kind of tangential slightly. My family's been doing yearly calendars with photos from the last year. So it's a similar idea, except for I never keep the calendar because it's outdated after the year. So again, I really, in fact, I think might very much do this. I like that photo book yearbook idea way more than a calendar or even just a Shutterfly book. For the Shutterfly books are fun, like if you went on a group vacation and everybody gets a memento. But the yearbook thing, I that's an idea that I really, really like.
Great Christmas gift, or birthday or Mother's Day, that sort of thing. It makes a great when you get together as a family to just sit down and look through them together and that sort of thing. Yeah. Even if you have old family photos that you've scanned in, making a book of those as well. Like I have lots of photos of my dad with his siblings when they were young. It would make a great photo book. So, just some ideas for everyone. All right, so that's a lot. Photos is probably a topic we can get back to. Do you have anything final you wanted to say on it, Pat?
I was just thinking that I have had so many of my clients talk about, I've got so many duplicates and all like that. And I just wanted to mention that Apple does have the feature where they will show you duplicates, and also at the same time, they show you the size of the photo so that you can determine, I don't want to get rid of that one and keep the thumbnail, Right. So that's a very valuable, and I've used that a lot. Google, somebody asked me about Google, and I did some research, and basically Google doesn't have a duplicate finder, but it won't allow duplicates to be uploaded.
Right.
So unless there's something different about the photo, it's a different resolution or a slightly different view. So but basically you don't have a duplicate finder because they don't allow duplicates to come in.
Although the Apple duplicate finder will find near duplicates, and that's another option that I didn't know that they had added. Yeah, it's like, again, when you have 12 photos of the same flower, just each slightly different. Google would not say that they're different, that they're duplicates true. Because they're slightly different. Yeah, there
are third parties that will go out and do a pretty good job. And there's one for the PC that's by a company called Digital Volcano, that I found to be the safest and the easiest. Now, they are not easy. It's not automatic. You get a group of photos and you decide, do I want to keep the best resolution of all of these, or they give you a lot of criteria, but you've got to decide yourself. There's no automatic way to do it. And whereas Apple's is pretty automatic if it's exact duplicates.
One thing to keep in mind when you're deleting photos is if you're syncing them from, backing up from Apple Photos to Google Photo, if you delete it out of Google Photo on your phone, it will delete it out of your Apple library. It's keeping them in sync.
That's right.
So don't delete it saying, well, I've already got a copy. No. So don't get caught.
And for people who are using Windows has a version that Apple has provided called iCloud for Windows. Mm-hmm. And in the beginning, it was just a read-only copy that you could see all your photos and then you could click on them and it would download them to your PC. Now they've got a way that they can bring in all of your Apple photos and you can determine, unfortunately, they don't sync really very well, as far as if you tell it you want to keep them all on your computer too, it forgets that. So you have to come back in and say, oh no, please download these. But now, if you delete it off of Windows, it deletes it out of iCloud.
Oh, okay.
So that I just wanted to say that's a warning, just like you were mentioning.
Be careful. All right. So photos, like I said, it's one of the most important things we do with our phones, our smart cameras, and I'm going to start calling it that. And it'll be a topic we'll be talking about again and again. So. If anyone has any tips that they want to share, any ways that they uniquely manage their photos for the benefit of their family or themselves, I'd love to hear it. You can let us know at technology@sqpn.com. So before we move on to our headlines, I want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Technology, including Father John R., John S., Luke E., Tim and Marie M., and Timothy B. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Technology and all the shows at StarQuest. And you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So our first headline that I want to talk about is from the New York Times. It's the headline was "Employees with Autism Find New Ways to Navigate the Workplace." This is a tech topic, I thought, because, well, a lot of people who in the tech industry, there are a lot of people with autism, or they are on the spectrum in the tech industry. Just put it that way. It's a thing we know, because that particular personality type is good for the sorts of things that are involved in a lot of tech work. So,
and they're brilliant. They're smart.
Yeah. Very often, yes.
Yeah.
Look at my one son with a high IQ who's been diagnosed. So the interesting thing with the article is that it makes a few interesting points I wanted to mention. One is the benefit of remote work for people who have who are on the autism spectrum, which is because so often, along with autism, it comes with sensitivity to noise, to sensory overload, crowds,
light,
even social anxiety, and
yes.
Being
able to work remotely is thus a benefit to people like that, and which makes this big corporate push. We talked last week about how Amazon just decreed that no more remote work. Everyone must come back to the office 5 days a week. If I was the sort of person who got those kind of difficulties, frankly, I would
quit the job.
This now. I wouldn't go back because I don't want to work in an office ever again. So I thought that was interesting, the remote work. But also they talked about Microsoft, how it has, among other tech companies has created a neurodiversity hiring program where they are actually seeking out employees who are neurodivergent and giving them accommodations in the office. They give them extra time during the interview process to answer questions and downtime between meetings with company employees. Anyone who's done interviewing anytime recently knows about the having to go from one person to the next to do all those interviews in one day in a company. It's nerve-wracking.
Grilling.
But they also provide a job coach to help with time management and prioritization. Time management is very important. Again, I live in a house of neurodivergent people, so I see all this stuff. Like, I want a job coach for my kids, and then mentors and managers who've received neurodiversity training. They even have focus rooms where lights can be dimmed and the heights of the desk can be adjusted to fit sensory preferences. And I love the idea of making these relatively simple accommodations for people to be able to work, because we're all not, square pegs to go into square holes. We're all individuals. What do you all think of this article and some of the stuff that these companies are doing?
I think this is just a win-win. I mean, if we're gonna be who we claim to be and claim to be, Christians, and well, then we recognize the dignity of all human beings. And this is just an incredibly simple and, in fact, dare I say, obvious way to acknowledge the dignity of especially those who can work well, but they just maybe not work like 75% of the other people who are doing the same job. But that doesn't mean that they are doing it any less efficiently. In fact, to accommodate them, they could be more efficient at what they're doing because that's where they thrive. And so just, I mean, I have a brother with autism, and I mean, he wouldn't quite fit these categories. But like, it's a simple thing to acknowledge that he's just as much as a human being as the rest of us. And so I appreciate the big companies at least recognizing they're of course more money oriented, but still this is a recognition of their worth and their dignity.
Just like I remember accommodate someone who's blind or has another physical ailment or disability. So go ahead, Pat. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, I was remembering when one of my other daughters was at a job, and the manager said, we really like people who are OCD and autistic, because once they know that, they are brilliant at doing that job. Once they've learned the rules, they'll never vary from them. And so they could be more valuable than some other employee that, had more of a neurotypical, that type of thing. And recognizing those strengths, I think, is something that companies that are smart will do. Now, if they're just profit oriented, they may never get around to that.
Right. Although one of the people quote in the story says that, some companies will say that such accommodations affect profitability, and they reject that. They say no, actually they have found that it improves workplace culture, improves overall well-being, which improves efficiency and in the end revenue. I love it. Go ahead.
If you treat someone like a human being versus just a bunch of cattle, you're gonna thrive and just naturally be more efficient, because you're going to enjoy what you're doing. You're going to enjoy the workplace. You're going to enjoy the people you work with, hopefully. But if you feel appreciated, you're going to give more back than if you just feel like you're one of the cattle being pushed through the chutes,
Right.
One of the comments that they made was, one of the accommodations Microsoft did is made sure that everybody, before they went into a meeting, they had a good outline and agenda for the meeting. And I thought, yay, for everybody, that would be such a big benefit. That would sure cut down on the length of meetings being wasted.
The inefficiency of an open-ended meeting is terrible.
Yes. Give me a time when this meeting will be over, please, before I even enter the room, and stick to it. So I think it's great. We'll have a link to where you can read this article, even if you're not a New York Times payer. It's in an archive. The Internet Archive has a copy of it as well, so you can check it out. It's really great. I think the church should imitate this in its employment practices, honestly. And some places in the church do, others could improve. Just put it that way. So our next headline is McDonald's touchscreen kiosks were feared as job killers. Instead, something surprising happened. Which is so much like what'll happen next will blow your mind. Like
Number 8 will astound you.
It's like a BuzzFeed headline, but this is CNN. The story talks about how McDonald's and other fast food chains started rolling out these kiosks, the self-order kiosks, 25 years ago, and everyone's like, oh, that's what they're doing. They're going to get rid of those minimum wage workers. They're all going to be out of work. And what they found is that they've actually increased the efficiency of order taking, and actually they are able to get people to order more food because they, and they love that. It's not necessarily great for us, the people buying it, but it means that the kitchen is busier, and it also frees up people to clean the dining room more often, which some McDonald's could use, and that sort of thing. And
interact with the customers.
Exactly. So it's fascinating to me because one of the things that it reminds me of is like, ever since they started introducing technology into the workplace 80 years ago, we kept saying, oh, it's going to make less work for people. We're going to have 3-day work weeks. We'll get paid for full-time work for working 20 hours a week. And, it's going to be a life of leisure for everyone. But what we found is the more automation we put into the workplace, the more work of other kinds we find to do. Mm-hmm. In fact, we're probably working more hours than people did 80 years ago with more technology. So I'm not saying that's necessarily the best thing, but it's interesting how introduction of this technology did not have the negative outcome necessarily that everyone thought it would. But what do you all think of it? I mean, do you use the kiosks, or do you prefer to talk to human beings if you ever go into a fast food place or whatnot?
It depends upon my mood that day. Because a lot of times if I'm not really feeling social, I'll just go to the kiosk, and there's only a few places that have them here. I don't go to McDonald's, but go to order it myself and take care of it there. On the other hand, some of them are not well designed, and I think one of the things in the article talked about kiosks that weren't well designed. People would give up and leave because they couldn't figure out how to order, and so I think like there's Panera you can do it there on the screen. Or you can, if you get frustrated, just walk up and talk to the person. They've got both.
Yeah.
The ones that kind of bother me that I haven't wanted to go into are the all digital ones. Right. Where you can't even see a human. There's somebody back there and they're putting it on a shelf on a conveyor belt and it comes out to you. I walk out of those.
Yes, your Soylent Green is being served by machines.
Well, it kind of reminds me of the old worries about technology, like you talked about. Yeah. If they come up with cars, we won't need buggy whips anymore, and if we come up with this, we won't need that. The jobs adjust to fit the new technology, and usually it means that lesser jobs are no longer, menial anymore. They're a little bit higher level of interaction or work. So I think it could be mostly helpful.
Mm-hmm. When I lived in a place where this was actually a thing. I've recently moved back to really small town Wyoming, so there's not going to be a single kiosk in the town that I'm in. So I'm forced to do all my. There's not even a fast food restaurant in the town that I'm in.
When you go to the saloon, there isn't like a robot behind the bar to serve you your Red Ball whiskey.
Oh, I wish that would be a really cool image. But no, actually, I mean, I use the kiosks a little bit, but I actually preferred to use the app. Mm-hmm. So it's essentially the same thing as the kiosk, except for I could do it, ahead of time. So then all you have to do is show up and pick your order up and go.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But yeah, I like the fact that the ones who are the workers can do more customer service. They can, it frees some of that up for that. And I mean, I look at Chick-fil-A actually as they don't use kiosks, but they have just such a great customer service and efficiency that I don't know if I'd ever want them to go with the kiosk. Like, I like interacting with them.
Well, in fact, they don't even have the speaker at the drive-through. They have a person standing there that takes your order, which I noticed. Yeah, so it's a little different. You know, it's like self-service checkout at the grocery store. So our grocery store has hand scanners that you scan the product as you go and bag as you go. And then when you get to the end, you just scan the scanner into the self-checkout, and it all comes up. You don't have to take everything out of the cart. It's already there. And it works most of the time. It crashes. It's got these Android phones inside them, basically, inside the scanners. And so last time we were there at the grocery store, they were down. And so we had to do it the old fashioned way. And I'm like, it's fine. The guy dealing with a person was fine. It's the laborious, half the time is spent just checking out. You know what I mean? It's just, I hate that part. But I really like I would interact with the individuals. I still interact with the fish guy. We talk about fish and we talk about what I'm having for dinner that Friday, because we always have fish on Friday. And, we talk about recipes and, I interact with these people I see every week. So it's not like I don't connect with people. It's just this one menial part of the transaction is automated.
Yeah, and I like walking into Home Depot and just going through the self-checkout line for the two or three things I have. It's efficient. I like it, and I can still wave at the people. But, I don't have to spend a long time waiting behind a lot of people. And so I know that self-checkout, they've had a lot more theft involved.
Yeah.
And that is the sad part. But to me, especially if I'm in a hurry and I'm wanting to get out of there and go somewhere, self-checkout for a few items is really nice. Yeah. I don't have any hand scanners like you have. I think I would like that, but yeah.
It may also be a North versus South thing, because in the North, I don't chit-chat with the cashiers, but I've noticed that down in the South, there's
Southern.
A lot of, how y'all doing, honey? It's such a nice day. And
how about how about this game this week? Whatever.
How about those Cowboys? Oh, never mind. So there may also be cultural differences as well.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So our last headline is, I thought this was fascinating. Melanie actually brought this one up to me. So the Ig Nobel Awards are sort of like weird science awards they give out every year. And one of the winners this past year was this British researcher scientist, Saul Justin. And what he basically has been studying was this phenomenon of the super old, the super elderly, people over the age of over 100, and how you always hear these stories about this guy who's 110 and, Okinawa. I've always hear this. Okinawa has the most people over the age of 110 of any country in the world or any, area in the world. And they call them blue zones. And basically what this researcher found out when he dug into the data was that it's all bunk. It's all bad data. There's no good data. In fact, what he found was in most of the places that are reporting these super old people, they don't have birth certificates for these people. They don't even know how old they are. So the reason,
and they don't record the deaths.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, for example, the Okinawa thing is they found that most of the people reported to be elderly, the super elderly in over 100 in Okinawa were either already dead and just not reported dead, or they lived in areas where they were bombed by the Allies in World War II, and all of the not baptism, they don't have baptism, but all the birth records were destroyed in the bombing. So, and in fact, they found that, especially again with Okinawa, is they actually have some of the worst health outcomes. They have the worst food and the highest amount of heavy drinking. They actually they don't have very good medical outcomes in general. So they find this in Greece, where there's a ton, or it was Italy. Pension fraud is another big one, where there's a big incentive to keep people alive, quote unquote, for the pension checks. And so they found that in areas where you expect, of poor nutrition and poverty, they were getting reports of all of these super old people, whereas you would expect that to be in places where there's better nutrition, better health, better in higher, that sort of thing. So I don't. What do y'all think of this? I mean, do you think it's all bunk? I mean, I've heard for years that we're all getting older. Are we all? Is the human race actually getting older, or are we all just living in this fraud?
Well, I guess I see that, poor reporting is a big thing. And yes, I remember an Irish movie talking about nobody wanted to report the death because they wanted to get the benefits, so I understand that. Lottery ticket. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And you hear this a lot. You hear about the Mediterranean diet and some of those things, and that makes more sense. But these, quote, blue zones, where they didn't know what it was that was helping them to live longer. Yeah, I think a lot of it is just poor reporting.
Yeah. And I think the lesson to take from this is actually just the over-reliance on science reporting is like you say, just because something was reported as a scientific study or just reported as scientific fact doesn't necessarily make it so. That you have to dig in. Just because a scientist reports something doesn't make it automatically true. The data is what's important. You have to dig in. So
well, even
it's kind of like AI, basically just because it says it is, you need to check your facts.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, even science is always open to being corrected and changed. Like that's the whole nature of science. It's not.
Yeah.
And
when someone says it's science fact,
yeah.
Science fact is like an oxymoron because science fact used to be the sun was the center of the earth was the center of the solar system, until we realized otherwise. Ultimately for me, you just got to be careful. But at the end of the day, you got to do your best to I think eat healthy and do your best to be prudent about things, but not go crazy and go overboard and just because somebody, lived, even if it was false reporting, lived to be that old because of some miraculous
vinegar every day.
Well, or, I seem to recall, wasn't it like Winston Churchill who smoked a cigar every day and he lived pretty old too.
Right.
At the end of the day,
there are exceptions.
Yeah. At the end of the day, strive to live as healthy as you can, but don't go overboard and go down the crazy rabbit hole of, all those crazy things and just enjoy life.
And I think as generations, we are living longer all of us know people in their 90s that are in great shape, and surprisingly, I've got a couple of clients that are in, 94, 95, and you'd never know it.
Well, we're not quite back to Genesis level, biblical
300 years,
age range. Yeah.
One of the things that always shocks me is looking at photos from 70, 80, 90 years ago, people who were in their 20s and 30s who look 50s and 60s today. Yeah. Or even just not that long ago, there was a famous, the Wilford Brimley in Cocoon was in his late 40s.
Really? Wow.
Yes. The Wilford Brimley Cocoon line is a funny internet thing where as someone reaches the age that Wilford Brimley was in Cocoon, they've passed the line. Carol O'Connor in Archie Bunker was 48, I think he was, when it was filming. So we are kind of, well, maybe this is a bit of wishful thinking. I think we are getting younger. We're
healthy longer.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that comes out in this interview with the scientist. He says, what's the secret to human longevity? And he says, no one really knows, but it's probably tied to wealth. Because rich people do lots of exercise, have low stress, and they eat well. Mm-hmm. And wealth is a relative term here. Pretty much everybody in the United States falls in the wealthy
sufficient category. Yeah. Where you have sufficient for your needs. Yeah.
There's always outliers and people who are very poor, that sort of thing. That's different. But in general, low stress, lots of exercise, eat well, eat healthy.
Better health care too.
Yes.
Although this isn't a great country for that.
No, that's another topic, but we have very low on the better healthcare things. And then I think that's but other than that, there's just not really any good data on it, as he says. There really just isn't good data. The UN, nobody has good data. So I just thought it was an interesting look at an important science topic. So that brings us to our picks of the week. And so, Father, I will go with you first. What is your pick of the week this week?
It's kind of an odd one, but it's unique well, it can be used in various situations, but I'm not even sure if you're going to pronounce this right, but it's the Yealink. I'm not entirely sure. MP50 USB phone handset, certified for Microsoft Teams. So it's just think of your pretty standard office phone. So it's got the number pad. It's actually got a touch screen, but you can do speakerphone. You can do pretty much anything kind of an office phone can do. It's meant to be used like you plug it into your computer and you can use it with Microsoft Teams. So you could have phone calls. You could do all of that stuff and use the handset instead of the microphone and stuff on a computer. Now, that's not why I got it and why I recommend it, because I'm not in a situation that uses Microsoft Teams, but I'm pastor of 2 parishes. And weirdly enough, in both of these offices, one of them, it's an office rectory combo. The other one is a new build office, but there was just one phone line going into the office. So that's kind of the main line. But so neither parish had a dedicated lines for the pastor. And so I was kind of pulling my hair out because I wanted a dedicated line. And so what I ended up doing was I ended up getting an iPhone that is just for the pastor, just for me as pastor. But then when I go to the office, then I'm carrying this iPhone with me, and I love the feel of an actual office phone. And it just, you can put it on speakerphone. It works really well for an office setting. So I ended up getting 2 of these, and I put one in each office. And so as well as connecting to a computer to use with Microsoft Teams, you can connect your iPhone or any smartphone to it via Bluetooth. And it works seamlessly as, a Bluetooth connection.
Bluetooth headset.
Yeah. It's a Bluetooth headset. That's
shape of a phone.
Wow.
So I just go whatever office I'm in. I just I have a dock for my iPhone and I plug it in, and but it's already connected to the phone with Bluetooth, and away I go. So I've really enjoyed them, but they're meant to be used with Microsoft Teams, but I use it. I mean, clearly both are completely acceptable, but I just don't use the Microsoft Teams portion.
I'm going to get one of these because, I mean, I don't love talking on my iPhone. That's one of the least favorite things with it. It's just, I don't know, holding a bar to the side of my head.
Well, yeah. The one downfall, if you're just going to use it for your iPhone, is the cord that would connect its USB-C to your computer. It's built into the device, so you're going to have a random cord sticking out of the back that you can't disconnect. But, if you drape it behind your desk, it'll just look like it was meant to be. Or you could cut it.
Use the scissors and cut it off if that's...
Because there's, one cord for the power and then one cord to connect it to your computer. But mine, I just don't connect it to the computer. So.
Okay. Very good.
$115, but not bad.
No,
worth it for my setup and anybody who's interested in the same thing.
That's kind of interesting idea. I had never thought of it like that, but yeah, that's an interesting idea. Pat, what is your pick this week?
I have so many elderly clients and so many clients that have gotten scammed and money stolen and all that. I just put together a list of 3 places where you could get help for that. Better Business Bureau has a what they call a recovery toolkit that you can go out and look at and download and get some help that way. AARP has a good place that they have available for people to download information about scams and frauds and all that type of thing. And FTC does also. So I basically just said, well, these are things that I can give to my clients when they get scammed, so they're not just saying, what do I do? What do I do? Now, and there are some of the banks, if they're still in a situation where they've got their personal bank manager or whatever, a lot of times a bank will help somebody go through something like this. But these days, with mostly banks becoming online and little kiosks, there's not even that anymore most of the time. Yeah.
I will add another one to the list.
Please do.
Identitytheft.org, which is a great resource. If you've been scammed, this is where you file your report. I've mentioned it in the show before, but if you've been scammed, you go there and you file an identity theft report, and that becomes your official, thing to wave in the front of every financial institution to tell them, that's not mine. I reported an identity theft. So
Right.
very good.
Well, and so people can give these resources, print them out, and give them to their family members, etc.
It's a great idea. Yes, that's the thing is it's not just for you listening. This is for
Right.
the people in your life who wouldn't be listening to the show that don't listen to tech podcasts. All right, so my pick of the week is a nice little travel solution that I used. I first used it when I went to Washington, D.C. this past January for the March for Life, and it's a 3-in-1 charging station for Apple devices because that's all that I have. So it folds down into a little puck, very compact, and then the top folds up, and that becomes the MagSafe spot for your phone to attach to it. And then behind it is a little Qi charger for, like, if you have AirPods or something like that, you can put that on there. And then there's a little bit that pops out and flips up, and that's the charger for your watch, if you have an Apple Watch. And it's all very compact, and it folds down nice and small, and it goes right in your bag, and I keep it in my bag. That's my travel charger. So it works really well. Charges everything up, pretty fast. Nice little charger, and it's $40, so it's not super expensive for a travel device. If you do any amount of traveling, having something like this, and then you don't have like 6 different chargers and stuff trying to keep track of all that.
Well, I can see somebody in a retirement home or in a small apartment that this gives them a central place to put all their stuff.
That too, yeah. I mean, it's less expensive than some of the regular standalone
Right.
things intended to go on your night table. So even just if you want to use it as a regular on your night table at home, it would work as well too. Yeah, I recommend it. So it's the Leisen. It's one of those all capital letter fake names. Yeah, fake names from a Chinese company. Things on Amazon. So we'll put a link in the show notes so you can find it. So. And that'll do it for us this time. That we would love to hear from you about if you have anything you want to tell us about anything we've discussed this time or anything else. You can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/technology or the StarQuest Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. Send us an email to technology@sqpn.com or visit the StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/Discord. And you can find links from our discussion and our picks of the week on our show notes at starquest.fm/TEC272. Be sure to write a review in Apple Podcasts or whichever podcast directories will let you write a review. You can do star ratings, I think, on Spotify. And share the podcast with your friends. Help us grow this community of listeners, reach more people, help more people. That's what we're here to do, is help people with their tech. Until next time, Father Andrew Kinstetter, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of technology.
Absolutely.
Pat Scott, thank you as well.
Sure.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Technology on StarQuest.